When I started writing Haunted Objects,
What year was that?
it would have had to have been about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Because I was here in Florida, my daughter 13, so maybe it was like 11 when they approached me, 10 when everything like kind of worked out. It was before Haunted Collector, I know, because we feature John Zaffis in the book, and he wasn't yet on television. I think if I remember the chapter. And the first thing that my co-author and I, we sat down, and we had some obvious things we were going to talk about, and we had to create the guidelines for what we meant by haunted objects, right? So, what would not be a haunted object? So if this book moves, which is gently haunted, by the way, which is one of your books,
Average 4 stars on Amazon.
now I feel like, oh wait a minute, you didn't say compared to mine. Okay, good. If this book moves across the table, it's not a haunted object. That was our standard, right? Like, unless...
How could it not be if it moves?
Well, unless this book always moves. Like, in other words, it was just what a ghost... Oh, good, we're going to get into an argument. This is awesome.
Obviously,
That's why I'm starting with this. Like, we wanted the book to be a collection of stories about objects that were the focus of a haunting, and solely the focus of a haunting, or they were cursed somehow, or there was a reputation of it, or it was like, for some reason, either the storyteller or the person who's bringing us the story felt that this object had captured energy or captured a curse, and so therefore just anything that moves is not a haunted object, but rather there's a category. Like there's certain qualifications.
I see where you're going.
You disagree?
I think if something moves, it definitely deserves a place on our shelf in the Cabinet of Curiosities.
But okay, so talk about these, because if I remember that kind of fits these guys.
These guys. Well, we've named these newlywed dolls from the 1940s. We've named them after 2 of the original inhabitants of the house, who were named Jim and Rossi Hearn.
Okay.
Weird name, Rossi, but so we called them Jim and Rossi, because I noticed that I would try to set them up so that Jim's arm was around his bride's shoulders, but oftentimes I'll come back to the shop in the morning and they will be standing apart or even looking away from each other, as if they've had a lover's quarrel.
So what do you think is doing that? Do you think it's Jim and Rossi here?
I think it's Jim and Rossi
like, do
here.
we get into arguments with our spouses? First of all, are we trapped with them? And second of all, I'm sorry, I have commitment issues. Like, fraternity's a long time.
Yeah.
But also, like, or is it some spirit just trying to say hello to you?
I think they're being playful. I think they're being very, very
I think
playful.
they like to be noticed.
And they do appreciate it that a married couple is here now, doing haunted stuff, and they like to engage.
Does it parallel what you guys are sometimes? Like where you guys are with each other? Like it's like your marriage counselor being like, he's like, I'm not answering that. Are you kidding me?
You'd have to log it for a while.
All right, you'd have to like document it and see whether it reflects you guys.
There would be no proof.
Wouldn't it be great if like the arm or the no arm was your way of identifying whether you should like?
We should, yeah. Because if I didn't have to be the one to break when he was doing it, I was upset.
It's like a passive aggressive haunting here.
Totally passive aggressive. But I've also sensed the real Jim and Rossi's spirit in the room that I use as my office, in my writing studio. Because when we first got the shop, that was originally the master bedroom, and it was dark and dreary and didn't feel like a nice place to be. And actually, it took about 3 times of visiting, as we were making the decision to buy the shop, that you actually even noticed there was a room there. And we noticed too, when we first took over the shop, a lot of people would walk by and not notice that a room was there because the energy was so dark and so heavy.
Do you think it was just an unconventional setup of the house, or do you think there was actually something like...
I think there was something in there pushing people away, and rather than feel scared or wonder, it's just like people had a blind spot to an entire room of the house. It was the strangest thing.
Tell us your journey of getting into the house, and more importantly, when you realized that there was something maybe bigger going on here.
I was actually only looking for office space where I could write. because I was working on some novels, I still am, and I needed a quiet place where I could get away. And this was a little vintage shop originally that came up for sale on Facebook Marketplace.
Like vintage clothing?
Vintage clothing, jewelry,
Oh, okay.
interesting things. And the price was reasonable, and it's 3 blocks from where we live. And I showed it to him, but I already felt like it was a done deal. The minute I saw the ad, I thought, well, that's my shop. And I had never, ever wanted to get a shop. I never wanted to sell antiques. That's not my thing. I want to sell books.
And did you think like, oh, I'll write and I'll open like a little bookshop here, or?
Kind of. And Dan grew up in his dad's flea market in
I
Michigan.
knew we could sell stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of an extra way to,
Yeah.
To pay the rent.
do stuff.
And people come to Deland to antique shops, so it's not like it's a crazy thing to be like,
Yeah.
we're on a main strip.
Right.
Yeah, it was the woman who had it was trying to run it by herself from Daytona. It was just like too hard.
Yeah.
So we were 3 blocks away, and we thought, wow, we can do that.
And at first I thought, well, I'll learn about antiques. My great aunt Dorothy was an antiques dealer, and when I was a new wife setting up my house for the first time, she said, yeah, you can buy antiques, and the only thing you need to know about antiques is that you just have to polish them with lemon oil.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, I know how to use lemon oil. I can sell antiques.
Yeah.
And then you found that was all you needed to know about it, because
Well,
everything else just fell in line.
yeah, sort of.
Well, kind of like the spirit keys, and I mean, we realized that she had stock of things and things to make the pendant jewelry.
Oh, at our
that we
house,
sell,
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, we actually had like a lot of the different things.
It did fall into place really
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah, and I mean, it was obvious that she was following the insight. And it just, whenever I asked myself, should we, do this? I mean, if it's not making a profit right now, should we keep it and keep doing it? And I always got a clear yes that it's, to keep going.
Yeah.
And so.
And so other than just a clear path, when did you realize that something was up?
A few weeks after we had moved in and I was running the shop, I noticed that doors would open and close. I mean, it sounds like a total cliche, but doors would open and close and lights would turn on and off. And I'd say, why are you always closing that? Or why are you always leaving
We're
that
into
door
folklore.
open?
We call them motifs and not cliches.
Motifs.
Yes.
And I'd say, please leave this door. Okay, I'll admit, it's the bathroom door.
Yeah.
I said, I don't want this bathroom door open. It's disgusting. It's the first thing people will see when they come into the shop. And he'd say, I'm not leaving that door open. I know you want it closed. Or why is it after you walk through the room all the lights are off? I mean, we're running a business here. Let's turn some lights on. I could say, I'm not. And then we got Haunted Charlie. And
That's
the little
okay.
doll, Haunted Charlie. He's about 100 years old. He's a little composite doll, and he's from what they used to call Grumpy Boys.
What is a composite doll?
It's like this plasticky resin thing that he's
Can I
made
turn
out
around
of.
and look at
Absolutely.
it? I know everyone else wants to see it.
Yeah.
He predates plastic that,
Okay.
modern
And,
times.
and for
get
those who can't
okay.
see on screen, he's just a cute little doll who
We'll
sits
take a
in like
picture
a
of it and
little,
post it
a
as
little
well.
wooden high chair. And of course, I would position him with his arms on the arms of the chair, and then I'd come in and his arms would be raised up like he was reaching up for a hug. I thought, oh, Charlie is moving on his own.
Can you move his arms? Like, do they move? I guess.
Yeah,
I should say.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's not like it was
Straight
But
leaking.
they
Okay.
shouldn't go up overnight.
Yeah.
That was
He's
odd.
trying-
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
My son right now, although he would not watch this episode,
Yeah.
would get articulation, I guess, is what
Yeah.
because he's always opening packets going like through.
I would just position him so he looks cute and comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of got an Adam Sandler thing going on, like they're going on. Okay.
And actually,
So-
he's smiling now. It's very interesting. So, you agree he looks like
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
smiling?
Yeah.
Sometimes he comes in and he's frowning or glaring. It's very strange how his expression changes.
So
I think he likes
he's the first
attention.
object item in the store
It's-
where it wasn't just it was a maybe. And you guys you're sensitive to it. I'm not sure if you were sensitive to it.
Well, I was the one,
At the
that
time.
when the most amazing thing happened with him, Corrine was in with somebody that was selling some antiques in the office, And I was out by the Cabinet of Curiosities, and
Which was not yet the Cabinet of Curiosities, or was it?
It was kind of transitioning
It was
into
building
the Cabinet
into
of
It's like put their
Curiosities.
special stuff in there,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
don't think you had named it that
I hadn't
yet.
named it yet.
Yeah, but
It was just,
it's like these things have come to her, gradually, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden it just all the pieces fit.
Well, I want to get to the come to you gradually part
yeah.
of where you get there. But like, so what obviously
yeah, what
changes-
happened? Well, what happened is I was talking to some people in front of the cabinet, and then this guy that was psychic had sat down in the rocking chair after we were talking about him, and then three of us were standing in front of the door, and we heard a clunk inside the cabinet.
well, first you heard in your head,
Yeah, first I was closing the cabinet doors after we were talking about him, and I'm like, there was something that said, "Would it be okay if something amazing happened?" And at the same
Which
time,
is the same thing you asked now.
Yeah.
Okay, or you
Yeah.
say magical.
Well, now I believe it
integrated that.
because as I was just as I was closing the door, and I had a kind of an automatic response like, sure, yeah, whatever. But I also felt like there was like in Flintstones, you had an evil and a good
Yeah,
little
the angel.
companion. And it's like, say yes, and
Yeah.
but it was this flash of a second, and I'm like, yeah, it would be. And I finished closing, and we're talking. Like 10 seconds later, a clunk inside the cabinet made me think something had fallen off a shelf, on the edge of a shelf, and fallen to the shelf below.
Yeah.
It was loud, and the guy who had said he was psychic was sitting in the chair. The door's closed in the cabinet, and he says, "Charlie, just turn around." I'm like, what? And so slowly I opened the cabinet door, and sure enough, he had been facing us. And we were
Just
talking
turned
about him.
all the way around like this.
Yeah, just like somebody went and spun him around, and he was sitting on a doily, and it went right with him.
Yeah.
And he was facing the back. So the psychic guy knew it wasn't something falling off the shelf. Is one of the things that struck me about that.
Right.
But,
Right, or even just a random thing that it would have been Charlie, would have been this. And so it transitions from just being like, there are maybe ghosts here, there's spirits here, there's weird things happening, to we now have haunted objects.
yeah. Yeah, it moved by itself.
And did it speed up at the point that all of a sudden was it?
And then it got to be almost, I would say, every day something strange happens.
So first of all, I want people to read the book
Yes.
and come take the tour. Can you take the tour virtually?
You
If
can.
you are anywhere across the country?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I don't want to hear all the stories. I want to hear that, like the how they come to you. Does that make sense? I mean, I want to hear the stories too.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is, because we've got some really cool ones for you to share. But I'm interested with like the theory behind it. Like, do the objects find you? Is it you bring something in, and then the spirit is like, you know what? I think Charlie's a good one for me to communicate with. Do you think they're cursed? Do you think they're, what I'm saying? Like, what is going on with this, with the story itself? Is it just antiques will always do this?
I think
Or is
oftentimes
it-
antiques will. I mean,
Yeah,
I've
I do too.
little boys have walked past. We have a booth on Friday nights at Artisan Alley downtown, and it says Haunted Antique Shop. And we saw some cute little 10-year-old boys walk by, saying, "Well, of course it's haunted. All antique shops are
Right.
haunted." Yeah.
Yeah.
I think spirits are drawn to things that they loved in life, or that they, that remind them of their lives. But I think at this point, the Haunted Antique Shop, if this doesn't sound too crazy, it's like a light. It's like a beacon for
We were talking
spirits.
about that earlier, so.
Yeah, I think it's a cosmic beacon for spirits where they know. We even have a sign on the wall: "Welcome, spirits."
Right, it's a comforting place, and it's not a like you were saying with that moment where you have to decide whether or not you're scared or not scared.
Yeah.
This is a not scared place.
But
Yeah.
I've intentionally set it up so that only good spirits are welcome here.
Okay.
I've set
Define
up,
good spirit
I-
for me first.
Good spirits are not scary. They're not malevolent. They're not looking to antagonize people. good spirits are looking to make a connection with people that they love.
Yeah, and we think of Charlie as a guardian.
Yes.
Why?
So
Why
he-
is that?
For the spirit world. Because we can't see everything, so we need somebody on that side.
Is he still in the cabinet? No, he's outside
No,
the
he
cabinet.
sits
now.
on the fireplace.
Okay,
now.
so now he's watching. I was gonna say because I'm not sure you want your watchdog in the
Yeah,
cabinet.
And
We
we've had
realized
another
after
psychic
that.
who came in and said he definitely doesn't want to be in the cabinet. He
Yeah.
definitely wants a place of honor and prominence in the shop. And he definitely will keep bad guys at bay. And in fact, I think he did scare a bad guy away once. I was closing up the shop. I was turning off lights, and this really shady guy in a hoodie came in the front door, and he stopped the minute he stepped into the shop. And he said, "They don't want me here." And I was like, "What, you got friends outside? What's going
Yeah.
on?" And I said, "Who doesn't want you here?" And he said, "The ghosts." And he backed out of the shop. He backed out. And as soon as he was on the front porch, he turned on his heel and he went sprinting down the street.
Yeah.
I was like,
And then you turned around and Charlie's got the
Waving.
big smile in there and one hand out saying. Do you think that any of the things here, because you were talking about people are drawn to what they are connected to it, do you feel, I'm going to ask both questions, and so take your time, eat both of them. One, do you think there are anything that are just merely like stone tape theory, just a recording, like a psychic recording, and there's no intelligent, it's just somehow, whether it's the material or whether what it witnessed or whatever, that it's just cycling energy through. I'll leave that one first.
yes, I do have one
So-
example of that. A lot of times on Sunday afternoons, Deland is still a really small town, a really quiet town. There's not a lot of traffic by the shop on Sunday afternoons. But I have heard several times the sound of a horse and wagon going by with the horse's feet plop, plop, plopping along and the leather stretching. And I think that's because we're on Deland's original east-west main route,
Yeah.
which would have had a lot of horses and wagons going by. And I think that is simply an echo.
Yeah. Is there any object in here, do you think, that has trapped an echo, though? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because you said objects.
Probably the chandeliers. We have a couple chandeliers hanging in the dining room where a lot of people,
We'll take the pictures of it and show it on social media.
a lot of people got married under those chandeliers. They were in what was called the Grant Bly House.
Yes.
A pioneer named
Uh-huh.
Grant Bly lived there. It became an event center. And these were taken out as somebody was turning the event center into a sports bar,
Okay.
which was a bad use of the building.
Yeah.
Building caught fire, burned to the ground, but we managed to get the
What makes you think
chandeliers.
that there's a psychic recording trapped in
Because
that?
people feel really good when they stand under the chandeliers,
Okay.
but I can't connect any activity to it other than the emotion.
Now,
People have really loved them here.
Yes.
And it's interesting, when we went to buy them, we were not expecting to find chandeliers at all.
yeah.
And we ended up buying
We went to
two
somebody's
chandeliers.
barn.
Yeah.
Yes.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
The-
she's like, "Well, I got the Grand Bly chandeliers." We were saying, "What?"
So that barn you're talking about and that Bly estate kind of has a history in both Volusia and Lake County for haunted objects,
Oh, really?
but that are they consider more psychic impressions than
Yeah.
things that are trapped. So if you go to the Astor Library, for example, there are a few items in that library that not only have like some kind of psychic recording, it seems to give off something like you're saying, the happiness, but other haunted objects are drawn to it,
Oh, cool.
and they almost seem to be like following it. I mean,
Uh-huh.
we've got someone. I don't think yet someone's done a book on that family. So if you're listening,
things
if you're
connect.
listening, Jonathan, like you need to get because they're. I don't know I know nothing about the history of the family. I'm not sure if you guys do, but there
A little.
seems to be a lot of paranormal stuff and supernatural stuff that's generated from that family.
Cool.
And well, that's one of us has got to write it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm putting. Well, you're here, so you can work on it. You were talking about malevolence. So the next question is: do we have any cursed objects? Do you have any?
No.
And
By choice.
Well,
Somebody
okay,
tried to sell me
explain to me.
somebody tried to sell me a human skull, and I was like, no, get that out of here. Even though I find out later those are worth a ton of money,
yeah.
and he was going to give me a deal on it, I just could not cope. with somebody's
Why
head.
not?
I don't think that's respectful
Okay.
to have a body part hanging around.
What if it had just been a cursed doll or a cursed?
We have some of those. Well, we have some that.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, so it's
the
not
letter
necessarily
that came in
haunt-
with him
you know,
that was the creepiest part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
What do you-
We have some old dolls that I got from a woman who said her mother loved the dolls more than she loved her own children, and she wrapped them up like mummies when she sent them to me.
Okay. And
But
that-
the dolls are just so beautiful. I love them anyway. I guess I feel the mother's
Oh,
love
you have
for
to
the
go
dolls.
get one of the dolls.
Well,
one of the
these-
mummy dolls.
These dolls were in bad shape.
They
Yeah.
still are.
They
That's
still
part
are.
of their appeal
And
to
the
me.
lady,
is
the
that
lady
they're-
was,
Yeah.
said
They're not
something
perfect.
like,
Was she trying to
Mommy-
like bind them? You think when she wrapped them up as mummies, like she knew?
I think psychologically there was something weird going on with her.
Because I've had experiences before.
And they came with ribbons tied around their necks and tied into bows.
and the letter said something to the effect that her mom always said, be careful with the dolls because they won't heal like you do.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I have a few different stories in Haunted Objects about haunted objects in the mail, and how they have a tendency not to come, right? So I had this sign, and it was more just satanic vandalism, but it was the Our Father mirror imaged written backwards in blood, in human blood. And so it was part of the case and part of the weirdness that happens. I hope that you didn't just push away from me as I tell the story and be like, what? But the weird thing about it is that after I finished the book and everything, and I had other experiences
There's
with
a bottle
this.
in there.
But it was, the interesting thing about it was when we came down from Massachusetts, we put it in the pod, and every time we went into the pod, it was outside. Like when we would go to check, it was out of the container we had put it in when we closed it up, and then sometimes it was, like everything else was locked up. And then we started locking that thing, and it would still appear up.
Yeah.
So then finally, the guy, the detective who had given it to me, Alan Alves, was like, can you send back all that stuff? And so I took all the stuff and packaged it up, sent it off, and he emails me and he's like, well, where's the Our Father? And I'm like, I put it in there. It was like, never got it. So there are a few stories like that. So I'm wondering whether she was, for some reason, like she had to contain them as she was shipping them.
Yeah.
And that's why she wrapped them, or just it was like a, Mommy says they'll hurt.
Yeah. It
Kind of
was.
thing.
I think it was more like
But you kept them.
I kept them. Yeah, she wrapped them like little corpses. And
So
tied
if
them
it
off
freaked
with
you
their
out,
neck.
if it freaked you out that much, then why did you keep them? Were you just so drawn to them?
I just think they're so ugly. They're beautiful.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I get a lot of that myself,
Yeah.
actually. The same thing. How do you get your objects?
I get them at estate sales, garage sales, but more and more people just bring me cool things.
Yeah.
Some people even bring things that they don't ask me to pay for it. They just want it out of their house. Like I had a beautiful wedding dress in here. And the woman who brought it said she collected vintage clothing, but ever since she had gotten the wedding dress, she had seen a woman in white in her house. And she believed it was the bride who wore that dress, and it freaked her out so badly that she couldn't keep it around.
And so do you still have the wedding dress?
No,
or-
I sold it. Somebody came in about 2 weeks after that and said, my daughter has been looking for a dress like this.
That's crazy. And so when you did now, if you're coming into, especially with 87 antique shops in the area,
Yeah.
someone coming in here is expecting that it's weird or it's haunted or something
Yes.
like that. Do you still feel the need to give them a warning, to tell them the story, to tell them, or you assume because they
want
walk
it.
into the haunted
I
antique
tell them the
shop?
story. I
Yeah.
tell them the story, and that adds $10
That is
to
not
the
cool.
price. That's
That's a crazy idea, though. It's like, you know what I want? Something borrowed, something blue, something cursed, something,
Yeah.
right? You just don't
Well,
hear that like they
apparently-
would want that,
and-
regardless of how beautiful it was.
She
She came
was-
into this shop to look for it.
And I mean, these people are out there. She was doing her bathroom in a Beetlejuice motif, so that's why she wanted the dress.
Okay.
Sounds like a good
I knew I was going to get something out of this year from as soon as
Yeah.
Beetlejuice is mentioned. Has there been anything non human part related that you have not taken? Like that you, even though the person says, "Oh, this is perfectly fine," like, "Oh, there's an interesting story behind this," you're like, either it won't fit here, like it won't mesh with something here, or
I want to say yes, but I can't think of offhand what it was. So maybe it'll come.
do the haunted objects never not like each other?
Good question.
Well,
Why, thank you.
Bride and
Well,
groom.
the dolls. They said
No,
the
I
dolls.
mean like not like other haunted objects. You know, like there's some kind of conflict with them, like
What do you
something's been
think,
moved
Dan?
away from
I
them.
think I think of them more like all as guests at a party,
Yeah.
and that none of them have any real problem with the other being there.
Well, yeah, but if I don't like someone at a party, I'm going to go across the room or something
Yeah,
like that.
there's lots
Have
of
you found
places to
things
land.
moved where you think
We
like
have found
every
things
time we
moved.
bring these
Yeah.
two objects
Yes.
together, they
Yeah.
Well, and I
Kitchen
think-
items more than anything
Yeah.
tend to wander off.
And I think it's partly because the kitchen items are the ones most common that would remind somebody of their grandmother, or something that was meaningful, like somebody did something important, like
Yeah.
feeding
And like
people.
that
is
cake
important.
server on the table in the kitchen area,
I
there's a
see
little
it,
cake
yeah.
server, that moves back and forth between the big table and the little table. And I actually had some people in saying, "Why do you keep moving that cake server? Every
Yeah.
time we turn around, it's moved."
so it's been
I
moved
see.
while people have been here.
While
Because you
people have been
also,
here.
in case you guys haven't gotten that, they also give tours
Yeah.
of the actual
And they
store.
thought I was tricking them, and I said, "No, I've been in my office the whole time. I'm not going to go move a cake server."
They thought you were trying to like freak
Yeah.
them out or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you know the story? Like, do you need to know the story of something to accept it?
No, there's so many
and-
things here I don't know the story of because, old stuff comes in boxes and we
How do you
sort it
determine
out.
whether it's haunted or not then? And do you? Or you just kind of like let it...
The things we
Well, the
think are
Winston
haunted are
Churchill
the things
thing-
that
Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally want to get to the
Oh,
Winston
yes.
Churchill.
Yeah,
I love that
yeah.
story.
But that's that, like you said, the story, it gives off its own vibe, but I think things literally want to be found by somebody.
Mhm.
Right.
I think they exist because someday somebody will find it, and it'll remind them of their grandfather, or something, a jackknife can remind you of your grandfather.
Yeah.
And just,
And we've had things disappear that I don't think were stolen. I think they've just
yeah, it's kind of a,
realized.
it's a.
Well, I was
we-
telling
we
you
don't
about
know.
that. Like, so many of the stories from that, I was like, oh, do you have a picture of it? And they're like, no, it just went away.
Yeah.
Like, one day it went away.
Because you said knife, and I remember we had a really cool pocket knife,
Mhm.
and that disappeared at a point where nobody had been through.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
And
a
you-
lighter, a cigarette lighter, disappeared.
You told a story about like a friend of yours who you hadn't seen in a really long time that you then saw. Like, do you think some of these objects find their way here because they know eventually someone who's going to need it gets
Absolutely.
here? And can you
Yeah.
give me an example of something that
The letter
like,
opener.
Yeah, the letter opener. It's in the book. So a friend, a business associate was in town. We had lunch about 6 blocks down the street, and then we came to the shop afterward.
Oh, I'll start, because you're getting ahead of the story.
Uh,
My daughter had been organizing our kitchenware, and she brought me this silver letter opener that looked like an old sword. It was beautiful, very, very old. And she said, "Where do you want me to put this letter opener?" Which I had never seen. I said, "I don't know, where did you find it?" And she said it was back with the wooden spoons, which is weird because I'm really good at organizing. I put everything office related on this
like
old...
with like, that's her motto.
My
Yeah.
motto is like with like, so I would have put it out on the desk with our desk things.
Not in the drawer with wooden spoons.
Right.
Absolutely not.
And so I thought, well, that's...
Sorry, you're saying wooden spoons. I was thinking about getting hit. That's okay. Sorry. Sorry. Continue. I'm back with you
So I
now.
thought, okay, a mysterious object of unknown origin, we'll put that in the cabinet of curiosities. And we put it in there, and this business associate came in, and he opened the cabinet, and he said, "Oh, I've been looking for a letter opener like this for my desk at work."
And then he was
Picks
holding
it
it,
up.
all of a sudden he goes, "And it's got my name on it."
And I thought he was
Literally
just speaking
engraved.
metaphorically, like,
Yeah.
this is my...
Got
And he
ya.
said, "No,
Yeah.
really, my
Maybe-
name, Jack, is engraved on the letter opener."
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us the
So it
Winston
is.
Churchill story, because I actually love that one.
Okay, and I bought this.
Even
from-
though I'm not going to touch it because I did it wrong last time and you yelled at me, so.
What?
I'm just kidding. Because I was like,
Yeah.
because here I am, like, you know, an 80s kid, a 70s, 80s kid going, I don't even know. I was thinking it was like a, you know, the bangers
Nobody
and
really
stuff like
knows how
that.
to do
So
it.
you wanna-
Yeah, it's a toy.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Okay, fine. When I'm holding it like that, then you get it. But I think you handed it to me with the ball, so
Yeah,
I didn't quite get it.
And
And that,
the one with the cup.
yeah.
right, I got
This is
that,
the
but
cup.
I was holding it like this. I think.
That's the precursor.
I was trying to
the
wonder,
cup
like,
one, I think.
I
Okay,
don't,
yeah.
I don't get
Is
what's
in the
fun
cup
about
one
this.
Mexican?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, same idea. So I got this from a collector who said he bought it at an antique shop in London, and that he was told that it belonged to Winston Churchill as
Okay.
a boy.
So, in that, you are looking at this
I'm just looking at
as a
it.
cool
wondering-
antique that
Yeah.
may have belonged to Winston Churchill,
Yeah.
and therefore
And I'm like, well, that
a Winston
you know,
Churchill fan's gonna like it, stuff like that.
It's possible because it's mahogany. It's beautifully.
Toys were,
Tooled.
you know, a nice toy.
Yeah,
It's from the right
You know,
age.
that
It's
took
from the
a
right.
while for
It's the
somebody
right
to
design.
but you just think it's a cool antique.
I think it's a cool antique, and I'm holding it in my right hand, and I'm not getting anything. And then I kind of heard that voice inside my head that said, "Hold it in your left hand." So I put it in my left hand, and my hand and arm started tingling like crazy. I put it in my right hand, nothing. Moved it back to my left hand, total pins and needles sensation. And I thought, I wonder. I grabbed my phone and I did the quick Google. Winston Churchill was left-handed.
Yeah.
And I thought that's the sign.
Oh,
This
okay.
was.
Did
Do you feel it when
Yeah.
you hold it?
When you said that.
So many people feel it when they hold it. in their
I don't know.
left
I
hand.
don't
Hold
know.
it.
No, I can't hold things in my life.
You
I've got
have
that
to
whole. I've got
allow
that
the
whole
spook.
neurological thing
You
anyway.
got to be able to
Left
get
hand
past the
thing.
spook.
I'm not spooked out by it. As more of a. I'm
Yeah.
the observer from the outside talking
Yeah.
about people.
It's a nice sensation.
Right.
It's more like confirmation.
Yeah.
And so, do you tell the person that, or do you go like, "Oh, this is I can up the price." Like, would you say add $10 because it's
Yeah.
haunted, or do you? Or is
I-
that something you
I-
make?
no,
Would
I
you sell
tell-
that?
We
Like,
just kind of play with it
I would sell it for a lot of money.
yeah.
because
I
now
mean,
it's in the book.
The stuff is really cool
Right.
and in
Right.
the book. I kind of want to keep around so that everybody can experience it.
Like, would you sell
museum.
Charlie? Would you sell the
I
couple?
would not
Would
sell
you-
Charlie. Charlie is the one thing in the shop I won't sell because, for all I know, he saves my life.
Yeah, he's looking out for you.
Yeah.
Has there ever come someone's come in and presented you with an object, and you're like, dude, I'm not getting back from it. Like, do you strictly allow your psychic impressions of something to determine whether or not you're going to bring it into the shop, or is it like,
No, not always. I mean, sometimes I won't get a vibe from something, but it just looks really cool.
yeah,
And we are an antique shop, and I want to make sure we have enough antiques to keep that line of revenue going.
so you don't sell the line that every single thing in here is haunted?
No. I mean, everything in here was beautiful, useful, and loved.
Okay.
Well enough to last for generations.
Can you tell she's a writer? She had that line like right there. Say it again.
Beautiful,
Everything in
useful,
here.
and loved.
Well, and that's
So
part
that
of our
gives us
beliefs,
some
you know.
inherent
Yeah,
value.
we discuss it because, like, if you buy something at Walmart. I mean, I was driving along the road the other day and I noticed a pile of furniture that was probably not 3 years old, but it was junk because, you know, it was assembled badly and it's cheaper to throw it away and buy new in the next place. So stuff that was intended to last, like a generation, is really, you know, rare for today's day. But I really think that they put their intent in it when they built it
Right.
for it to last.
So technically speaking, you could
makes
say
sense.
everything is haunted by love.
I think
Okay, wait a minute.
well, that's where I was going. Everything that's still here
Yeah.
was loved.
There is emotion attached
I mean, if you
to
take
it.
like old school stuff or even new school stuff,
Yeah.
that's craft today, crafted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or
There's a piece of somebody's
artwork.
soul
You know what I'm
in
saying?
that.
Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at this. You
Personal
can't
item.
see on the camera, but it's
The
a
Churchill toy.
very ornate. It's got engravings in it that go horizontal, like 6 in a row there, and it's got
Somebody
somebody-
spent a few days
yeah,
carving this.
and thinking about it or
Right.
whatever.
No,
I mean,
it
it
makes
took.
sense.
So all of the things compared to, like I said, in Walmart, they're always about the cheapest price. It's made out of materials that won't even last in a landfill, let alone a house for very long.
And there's something passive about an iPhone, right? Regardless of the quality of it. I mean, you talk about like the dangers of social media, but there's something passive about it. Like, right? You're focused on the content, maybe, but usually just passing the time, as opposed to that. Winston Churchill would have been so like laser focused on trying to get to it. Maybe that's why there's such a dolls, right?
Dolls,
And obviously dolls can look creepy. You got Robert, you got Annabelle, you got some other stuff. But the idea of just like the intensity with which a doll is cared for, the intensity that you put into a book, reading a book, like really reading a book, generationally maybe even, or passing it down. What it sparks in you that you pass to someone else because you got such a good passion for it. Like, your intent is much more intense, and therefore. So do you find like what are other kind of like the hierarchy of haunted objects that you find are in here, or just in general? Because I'm sure for every object that you have in here, there's another object that you don't have that someone has told you about because that safe place.
Well, weird things happen. Like there was a woman came through, and we had when we first bought the shop, and it had some old magazines that were part of the inventory when we moved in, and you know the name of the family, so you can probably tell it better than me.
The Dion quintuplets?
Canadian, five kids born in
the early 1900s. I think they were the Dion quintuplets.
Okay.
And they were beautiful little girls, identical quintuplets. They became a media sensation. This was back around the time of Charles Lindbergh. And she and her daughter went straight to this book, and they were so excited to find it. And it turns out they were Dion's themselves.
Yeah.
They were members of the Dion family.
Yeah.
They even had the same brown eyes the little quintuplet girls had. I took their
they looked like
I forgot about them. That was so. And
like
you
five
said
happy faces.
You said that's a really good example of how we want everybody who comes in to find something that is significant to them.
Yeah.
So I find that there's different types of objects that.
I think most of them are more
right?
subtle, like a grandfather's pocket knife or a grandmother's spatula. Or
I have a bunch of sheet
something.
music, and people who are drawn to sheet music connect with it on that visceral level, not because they recognize the music itself, but because it speaks to what they value in their lives.
So it's more of the person, it's more of the living.
Yes.
And what they're finding with it than necessarily like. See, I'm from the perspective of like, oh no, that sheet music, you've got to focus on it. It's like I'm saying, it was like, not only was it there during all these times when there were a lot of people around, a lot of juice, a lot of energy, but also you had to focus on it, as opposed to, a knife where I'm just like.
And sometimes it's so
mundane. But you think it's more of what's connecting with the living.
Yeah, we had this antique sandwich maker, like you put the sandwich in this press and it had a long stick and you would hold it over the campfire.
Yeah.
And I had two old ladies come into the shop, two old sisters, like in their 70s, 80s. And they started fighting over it. And they said, we used to fight over this when we were
little kids.
Yeah. And this is just like what we used to, use around the campfire with our
both
family.
wanted to buy it.
Did you start a little auction going on with them?
25 for you, 30 for you, do I get 40, do I get 50? Yeah.
What's next for the store? Like, is it? And I also want to know, because obviously we're on Halloween Eve, right? It's big news. Everything, it's. Is it like this in June? Is it like this in January?
It actually is. I mean, the people who come in now, I call them tourists because they're coming more for the tourists than the antiques.
Yeah.
So of course I'm always looking for cool old antiques, but what's most popular now is people walking around hearing ghost stories and sharing ghost stories.
Why do you
So
think that is? Do you think it's
I think people need that human connection, and I think that only intensified during COVID.
Right. I was
Yeah.
gonna say
People
that being
want to
isolated.
connect.
so people are finding you specifically? Like people
Yes.
are looking for Haunted Deland,
Most
And
people
they
are
are-
coming from out of town at
Yeah,
this
yeah.
point. Yeah.
and they're coming in, and it's business is good all year round, or business is going all year round.
Yes, and it's
not,
the haunting.
It's not a
that is-
novelty for a.
No, it's not just a Halloween gimmick.
And
It's
it's not the antiques part of it. I mean,
Because there's 5 antique shops
Yeah.
a few
Yeah.
blocks from here. and-
local people like the history.
What do they think of you guys? The other antique shops? Do they think you guys are real, or that you guys are like?
we don't go and ask them. We haven't gone to ask them.
Good answer. Wow. Running for mayor of Deland.
Well, the sad
Very
thing about
political answer.
The one downfall to working here is that I'm always here.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I don't have a lot of time to go.
But you've never had any of them being like, do you guys want this? Like, or trying to give it up because they've realized that something is going on with this, and it's not right for their antique shop.
No
but
bad feedback like that.
Yeah.
And actually, the people who sell antiques now, the ones who do the best business are actually just renting a booth space in an antique mall.
I gotcha.
Most of the family antique shops didn't make it through COVID.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it's Florida. I mean,
Our
Florida is
sister
flooded
living
with
in Bellevue.
antiques.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's. I mean, to be able to make rent and do, I mean,
Everybody's got
selling
antiques.
trinkets isn't going to get you that.
yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it though? I mean, because you're saying like the personal connection part of it. Like, isn't that what that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I think I told you guys a little bit about this when we went to Lillian Place. It was like everything was just. I mean, it was all this type of stuff. It was all just kind of thrown around because they hadn't gotten around to doing this, that, in the historic society. I don't know. It seems like that we want to spend time with things. We want to slow down. You know, like my kids. I give my son a puzzle, and he's totally with it. You know what I'm saying? Or if I give my daughter something to color, as opposed to be on her phone, she'll, oh my god, no. but then, like, and once again, that focus, that intent is there. Like, I think we do want trinkets, and you guys would know better, but like, I think the small little things are,
Yeah. I think people are more in the mood for something that is expansion, show us new ways of thinking.
Yeah.
I think people are open to new ways of thinking now because, I mean, face it, a lot of our old standbys of like the walls that made us feel safe and strong, the 22 pathways
Yeah.
on the Tree of Life all kind of crumbled.
And people love coming
Around us.
here in groups that are multi-generational. I've noticed that too.
Yeah.
You get the grandparents, the parents, and the kids. Which is another reason I don't want scary stuff in here, because I don't want anybody going on Yelp and saying, oh my God, it's gruesome.
Right.
It's very family friendly.
We noticed that trend when haunted B&Bs really started to do an upswing. That it was always, not always, but there was a lot of, this is my son. I don't have the slightest idea what he does. I don't get the video games he plays. He doesn't get, like, but we can talk about ghosts, and we can come here and we can do this. And that multi-generational thing was making the businesses run, but then also these people connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna. I don't think we've
everything's,
processed,
you know-
and we won't know for years the actual impact COVID has had on us.
It did so much damage to
You know,
kids.
Yeah.
it
More
just,
than
it's-
anyone, it just ruined kids.
Yeah, and I see, being a teacher, I
It
see that.
shifted
Of course.
My son, I posted about my son. My son has not had a normal year of school his entire high school career, and he's graduating now. Ian, knocked out homecoming, and we're not going to know, right?
Yeah.
So I see a 13-year-old. Like, it was more pronounced when I was in the middle school, and I had 7th graders, and I'm like, you're a 4th grader. Like, in your mind, you're a 4th grader because
Yeah.
you haven't had.
Yeah,
We had that development.
there's a progression, and the I think a big part of what was lost is we had unquestionable buy-in, right? I mean, the idea of not going to school. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
only a few kids in the worst kind didn't go to school, right?
Right.
And now we have a whole
Yeah. Now we,
generation of kids who didn't go to school.
Right.
Well, and parents who
saw
were like,
us-
you know what, that helped me see this, this, and this about that school, and so therefore now maybe I will homeschool,
Yeah.
or will I, and it's not,
yeah.
Maybe we
it's no
weren't on the
longer
same page.
just a
like we
religious
thought.
thing, or like a, it's kind of standing
Yeah, it's
out.
like a lot of automatic decisions that we made before have collapsed. So
Yeah.
now we have to make intentional decisions.
But when they come to the haunted antique shop, all the pieces fit.
Yeah, yeah.
And they feel like, okay, we have a past to build on.
And we allow this to be a special place for somebody to find something that will remind them of somebody or something they love, and find it at a reasonable price and everything else, and just because we are open to their spirit getting the information they need from another spirit,
Yeah.
you know?
So this becomes the vortex that we were talking about
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
It's a portal.
Yeah,
A portal.
We let it be a portal, yeah.
And is it any coincidence? It's in the Ocala, right?
Right.
Like where portals seem to be,
Well, like those magical coincidences. I mean, we didn't even cover them all there. After we moved, I sent an aunt of mine sends everybody the updated Christmas
Yeah.
email addresses and mailing addresses. So when I emailed her that we live in Deland, she said, "Oh, your grandfather had a brother who lived in Deland for a while, and he lived here for 30 years, raised
Yeah.
a daughter here and everything. He happened to be already gone."
We should channel him.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an odd coincidence. And then
Yeah.
another, pretty good friend of mine, I was driving back, and he told me he had spent a lot of time in Florida when he was a kid, but I was telling him that, hey, we just put an offer on a house in a town named Deland. And he goes, "What town?" I said, "Deland," funny, because he lives in Boston.
Yeah.
He lives in outstate Massachusetts now. He says, "I spent my summers as a kid in Deland with my grandparents."
Yeah, and it's
And he said, "My aunt works there at the
I've
Beacon."
I've had a few towns like that over the years that sarcastically you say like, oh, everything happens like that here.
Yeah.
Deland seems to be one of those places because of all of the Ocala towns, Deland is the one. Deland and probably Ocala itself is the one where people come up with specific examples of the haunting or the weirdness.
Well, here's a good Halloween trivia for you. Possibly the most famous Delandite in history was Lurch. The guy who played Lurch. Yes.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
So where can people find you? We didn't even get into all of your books and stuff like that. We're gonna link these things, but where can they physically find the shop and virtually find the shop?
Sure.
And with that, make sure you have the social media ones. 'Cause
Okay. You can find us all over the web simply by searching Haunted Antique Shop. Our website is hauntedantiqueshop.com. Our social media handles are all
So
various.
you guys were
on the
smart enough to
theme.
make all of your social media the same as opposed
just
to...
look
okay.
for Haunted Antique Shop. Our hashtag is Gently Haunted. I try to use that on everything
Which
because
is-
that's the title of the book. Yeah.
So they can find you by Gently Haunted.
Gently
find you by
Haunted
that
or
stuff.
Haunted Antique Shop will turn us up.
Very cool.
And our address is 612 West New York in Deland. Also, just Haunted Antique Shop.
I
You'll
was
find
gonna say,
us.
if you go to-
Another
if you're
coincidence,
into land.
when we most of our time in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, the area code in Minneapolis, the area code
Yeah.
is 612.
And that's our address
That's
here.
your address here.
Yeah, we're back in the
it's like
612.
coincidence number 20 about numbers.
Represent. Very cool. So it's a convergence. It's amazing stuff. Your books are all here. Your books are online. Make sure you say your full name so people can
My full name is Corrine.
skip right by your website. Go straight to Amazon with them.
Yeah, Corrine Kenner. You'll find me on Amazon everywhere too.
Beautiful. Excellent. Well, guys, thank you very much. This is the first show that we've put up. We did the trick or treat one,
We did.
and I just put it up halfway through the month because then the hurricane happened, right?
Right, it did.
That was pre-hurricane, and so October is the month where you got to make your money. So we haven't been doing a lot of creating, so we're happy to actually be able to come out and do it. You can make sure to follow us on all our social media, which is nowhere near as uniform because on Facebook, we're facebook.com/trippingonlegends. Spooky Tripping on Instagram, and the email is spookytripping@gmail.com, and then Spooky Balzano on Twitter. So, however you're following us, if you found this because of your amazing analysis and exploration of the tarot, or because of the haunted objects and the story itself and the amazing things that are here, make sure you are listening to the show and going into the archives and seeing the other shows that we have, where we get more into the folklore of some of this stuff. And make sure that you're following us because we are going to be generating content again, right? After we take a few weeks off and sleep, after this Halloween season, we're actually going to be able to generate content again. So for Christopher Balzano,
And Nikki Mia.
you guys can throw out your names again one more time.
Corrine and Dan.
Dan Horon?
Here's hoping that all of your trips
Our legendary.